Hello, my name is Jim Ballou. I am the CIO at Esquire Deposition Solutions. We're a court reporting company, and our mission is to preserve and protect the sanctity of the record to ensure equal access to justice for all. So our team is comprised of three different areas, right? First is business intelligence. Of course, that's responsible for enterprise architecture, automation. In fact, with Mercado, that's where that function lies, infrastructure, and development. So I've got about 9 developers, I've got about 9 people in support, adding a new one soon. And I have several people in business intelligence. So all told, it's just shy of 20 people in the group for support infrastructure under the infrastructure side of things. And then for business intelligence, we've got 3 there, and the development team is growing as well. We constantly struggle with a backlog from a development perspective. So when we kind of hit the wall with COVID back into 2020, March 2020, pretty much everything, all the business dropped off a cliff because the deposition takes place in a room with people sitting across from each other. An attorney, you have the person who's being deposed, and then you have an attorney for the deponent, and then you have a court reporter. You might have an interpreter, and you might have a videographer. So you've got a pretty significant population of people in a small room. Now, when COVID hit, nobody wanted to go into that room, right? And so, gosh, I guess 90% of our depositions dropped off the books. Just the business evaporated almost overnight. How do we conduct business, right? How do we conduct business if people don't want to be in a room together because they're afraid of getting sick? So we already had a remote deposition offering that we created in 2018, and it was less than 1% of our business. We do hundreds of thousands of depositions every year, and I think we did maybe 100 a year in 2018 and 2019. Now, that was a mature offering, but it was entirely manual. So we have almost 30 people who have been moved over as a result of COVID to do this remote reporting. Obviously, that's not sustainable, especially as we started to ramp back up with that remote offering. We identified Mercado as an appropriate solution. It was actually recommended by a vendor we're heavily invested in, Box.com. Mercado was a big part of changing Esquire's model to be able to engage with our clients remotely, right? To empower them to conduct business even in a very difficult business climate, right? With COVID and uncertainty, attorneys have learned that you can't bill for travel time when you drive somewhere, but you can bill for deposition time. So if you can add 30% onto your billable time as an attorney because you don't travel every day, you're probably going to like that. So I don't think it will ever go all the way back. Mercado was a big part of not only scaling our business, right? I would say that Mercado was a big part of enabling us to embrace this business climate and this remote model. Without it, again, it wouldn't scale in an economically feasible way. I'm glad we did it because we were able to keep those folks and able to make that shift by learning from the manual processes and then automating them. But I wouldn't want anybody to have to do that every day. I'm glad that Mercado handles that. There are a lot of those interactions with systems where you have to pull things out manually and then dump them into a spreadsheet. So I'm kind of hunting those things down and figuring out what those use cases are and trying to think about how they might work in the future with Mercado. We have almost 30 people who have been moved over as a result of COVID to do this remote reporting. It was really neat because as the work started to ramp back up, they were able to go back to their jobs as binding depositions or doing quality control. And then this did the same thing with scheduling Zoom meetings. So we literally have a Mercado recipes that go through and look for an open room. We were able to release those folks. We did it incrementally back to their actual jobs. Didn't lay them off. We put them on a manual task and we automated the manual task. Manually takes time. You have to babysit it. You have to make sure it works, to make sure it comes down properly, and that when it gets there, that it works properly. So we changed that from something that would take 5 people all day, every day, monitoring all these streams of downloading, to a task where you have somebody doing quality control and spot checking these things, making sure the downloads come through. Now have an automated solution that hosts literally 1,000 to 2,000, actually, yeah, thousands of times more remote depositions per month than we used to. I think remote depositions were less than 1% of 1% before. They're now, they're now at about 50%, but at its peak, remote depositions were about 85% of our business. It's one of my proudest moments as a technologist that we were able to make that work in a way that allowed us to feather those folks back into their real jobs with after automating, because we couldn't get to that volume without the automation. And it's made it easy to tell people the story. Look, COVID, we didn't lay anybody off. We repurposed almost 100 people to do different things, and then we got back into their roles, and we kept going. And now we're stronger than ever. We've made a bunch of acquisitions. We're doing very well, and it's because it's a scalable platform. That's the key. The real key was to do that with development would have taken much longer, right? To do it with Mercado took a couple of months. So the timeline was another big deal, because the business started to ramp up after about 3 months, but it ramped up remotely. And I feel like we were on the vanguard of that as opposed to being behind everybody else, because the time to adoption was faster with Mercado than it would have been with development. And our developers needed to focus on, building features that worked in a remote world of our non out of the box SaaS applications. Probably would take 4 to 5 times longer. I would say we were kind of done with the prototype in 2 months, and then had it ready to roll and fully implemented in 3. And I would say that would have taken a year otherwise, anywhere between 9 months to a year. So 3 to 4 times as long to develop that from scratch than to be able to use those plugins and tools. Maybe even longer than that. But I've got a good number of developers. I put them all hands on deck. They could probably figure it out. That's a very, very expensive solution versus what I spend, the time I spent and the money I spend every year for Mercado, which is a pittance compared to keeping 10 developers on staff to work on just that.